Okay, welcome everybody to a new edition of the Trailblazers Cafe. I'm Nancy Fox, the Business Fox, and I started this series to inspire and inform professionals about really new opportunities and new possibilities in business, career, and life. And this series is really all about life reimagined, not just career reimagined, but life reimagined on your own terms. And so that's what this whole series is about. Now today, I have a fantastic guest, Chase Birky. And he's anything but traditional, even though he's a CPA. He's the founder of Dark Horse CPAs. And already you know that this is not a traditional CPA, but he's got a lot to share. I've spoken with him before, and I have a lot of questions for him, but I want to introduce you to Chase Birky. Welcome, Chase.
Thanks for having me, Nancy. Happy to be here.
I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. So I know you have a lot to share about your very, very unique CPA. I won't even call it a firm, okay? Let's not even call it a firm, because I think it's something completely different. But before we get into talking about your business, I want to ask you, I want to sort of go under the hood a little bit, and I want to ask you about you. I want to find out, have you always been a mold breaker, a trailblazer? Have you always done things your own way? What is it about you that made you want to go a different way?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've always been particular. Trailblazer is not a word I necessarily would have given myself 15, 20 years ago, but I think it's something I grew into. And really, just as an evolution of kind of where my career started, what, wasn't working for me. Obviously there's a huge talent shortage in our industry that's driven by a lot of things, and as opposed to just trying to, articulate the problem, it was really time for a solution. So really, I would say that, trailblazing for me came out of just recognizing a need for something different and realizing no one else was going to step up and do it. So, I needed to be that person.
So you went into a very traditional, profession. So what made you do that?
Well, I mean, I would say that growing up, I kind of had, being a CPA circled as something that would be potentially a good option. I had a coach who lived a pretty good lifestyle, drove a nice car, seemed to kind of make his own schedule. So I was like, oh, CPA might be something worth looking at. Went into college, business administration major, and, took my accounting courses, got heavily influenced by those professors that, I had proclivities for that, and was like, okay, I'll take their word. And I graduated in 2009. So, right in the heat of, kind of the worst of the downturn. And so just to get a job at that point, it was significant. And so I got that job offer my senior year, which was 2008, at a time where, some of my friends who were a grade older, were trying to get jobs at Chili's and couldn't even get that. It was kind of, you just had to kind of take what you could get. And so not really knowing what I truly wanted to do, what I did know is that accounting is the language of business, and that would be a great platform, for whatever I wanted to do. So in a lot of ways, it was not as much self-directed as it was, okay, here's my skill set. I've got people telling me, this is what you're good at, and I've got validation from a job offer. So, that was kind of what started me, down this career.
It was pretty practical. You were being practical about your career and your life, right?
Totally. And, I think one of the things that I would have done if I could have redone my youth and college experience over is just get a better feel for, what's out there, because I felt like I was a little insulated in terms of knowing what even, a job in audit or tax was actually going to look like versus what was taught in a curriculum. So with a lot of things, I think my general, modus operandi in life has been jump into something and figure it out. So that was definitely true with the beginning of my career.
I think a lot of people who go into accounting specifically is they're told by family and friends that it's a really safe world, right? This is the actual, like the complete contradiction to the whole topic that we're talking about today. So it's a completely, and it's the antithesis of being a trailblazer or a mold breaker or a groundbreaker, right? So what actually led you to choose to lead the pack, to lead a new pathway, to carve new ground?
Yeah, so I mean, rewinding a bit, the entrepreneurship course in college scared the crap out of me, to be perfectly honest. It was something I felt like was too many different facets of business that I was not well enough versed in, and it was a bit of paralysis by analysis, which I think a lot of accountants can relate to. So I went into working at the Big Four to start in audit, realized very quickly that wasn't going to be where I could stay for a long time because I just didn't resonate with the work, ton of hours, ton of stress, just not happy there. So, out of a bit of a desperate decision, I went into a business partnership, which didn't work out over the long term, but kind of got me feeling like, okay, here's the other side of accounting. Here's tax and, actual accounting for small business as opposed to audit. And working in value oriented ways, strategic advisory, so that's where I kind of felt, okay, this is something I can work with. But because of a number of experiences, both at, Deloitte and as well as the partnership I was in, I really started to realize that, I wanted to do this on my own, and I needed to do that. So I hung up my shingle starting in the summer of 2015, and quickly realized that a lot of the lies that I had told myself about what I could and couldn't do, from all facets of business, client acquisition, being able to do the work, deliver the results, have happy clients, all these sorts of things, that, I probably just had doubts because I hadn't done it and it looked difficult from the outside, were things that I ended up shying away from until I finally just made the plunge, right? And so once I did, for me, it was a journey of transformation. It was probably even more personal than it was professional to be able to realize I could do this, and I was capable of a lot more, than I had put myself in a box beforehand. So that journey for me ultimately is something we're trying to replicate, at Dark Horse in our Accelerator program. And, I just know from my own experience that being such a transformational journey, that's something I want to have other CPAs, experience as well. Because what we've found over the years is that there's, just a lot of desperate accountants out there, that are dissatisfied with their current work. Usually there's just one of two ways you go. You either, if you're not going up the ladder and going the partner route, you're going into private industry, or you're going out on your own. And those are kind of really the two options, right? And so
we're out of the profession entirely, right?
Right, totally, yeah. And that absolutely happens. So, we felt like there was just a different way that we could create, that combined the best parts of being at a firm and also being an entrepreneur and being autonomous and building a book of business yourself and having that journey. So ultimately, a little over 2 years ago, we hired our first accelerator in this program we had built, where the idea was to have someone come in with no book of business, build them up, make them a principal of the firm, and rinse and repeat. And, we've made a lot of.
So one trailblazing thing you did is to create the role of accelerator. Okay, could you define in your firm what an accelerator is? Exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah, so an accelerator is someone who has typically anywhere from 5 to 13 years of experience at a traditional CPA firm that has aspirations to do something different. A lot of times, that is something, they're thinking about going on their own, but, they get that paralysis by analysis. And, at that phase of career, a lot of folks have a young family or about to start a young family. So the idea of going out without a paycheck, you're paying for all the startup costs, technology, everything that comes with starting a business, the leeway of building that clientele, doing the work, billing before you're collecting, and then trying to pay off all the debt you've incurred in the meantime, and also be present with, your family. It's a lot. I mean, it really truly is. So, ultimately, that demographic was a great place for us to start. Because those folks, what we could provide to them was a 6-figure salary so that they could, continue to live comfortably, providing them with all the technology they would need, to do all phases of their accounting and tax work. And then more importantly, probably than anything, is training them up on how to sell, how to, talk the game, how to convert these leads into clients. And I think a lot of people come in without any sort of skill set in that regard, because anything that they have learned has been, trial and error, or, maybe just watching, a partner at their firm do it. Never been any sort of.
Right. The traditional method is the partners in the firm will mentor you and show you, and half the time they do a very, sketchy job of it, or they learned it in a really it was sort of hit and miss. They didn't have a system. They can't replicate it. And it's inconsistent. So some firms will bring in consultants like me, but for the most part, it's really not like they just want to get the work out. And what you're saying is that you're actually putting a major focus on developing and helping your what do you call them? Team members, your staff? What do you call your employees?
Well, I call them team members, but yeah, I mean, we've got our accelerators, that eventually become principals of the firm, and then the folks that, support them.
You're developing them and helping them gain this transformation. By the way, that was the very first time I ever heard an accountant use the word transformation. You've said it every time we've spoken, so I know that this is a key. It sounds like a mission of yours to help your people transform.
Yeah.
Inside out, right? Not just because what you were talking about is you had a mindset shift, a paradigm shift, a complete transformation about who you are and what you're capable of and your potential, and then developed it so that it was actually put into action. Yes, is that sort of a summary of what you've been describing?
Absolutely.
So you've got definitely a new structure, a new model, right? Is your plan at Dark Horse CPAs to replicate the model in other branches, build that? What's your dream of it? What's your dream for it? And how do you get that out to the whole team?
Yeah. So, I mean, we use a word that is probably overused, but we're here to democratize the modern CPA firm. And really what we mean by that is to bring all of the best resources that, a CPA firm can have, and bring that to the individual practitioners and their, supporting teams, so that they don't have to spend their time, trying to figure all of that out themselves. It's very costly, to get the right technology stack, doing the right things, have automations, just all these things that people know are out there, and want to deploy for themselves. But, when the rubber meets the road, it's kind of like, where do I start? Can I afford this? Do I have time to actually project manage it? And if they're running their own business, there's so many other things that, they have to focus their effort and time on. So really, we've created a platform, if you will, that allows folks to just focus on, building that book of business, servicing it well, leveraging the technology, so that they can be the forward-looking advisor, and have that be, their focus. Because we've found that a lot of CPA practitioners are great practitioners, not so great business owners, which is not, and it's not meant to be derogatory.
It blows my mind, because the thing I love about, and this is really, people go, why do you like working with CPAs so much? Because you guys have the keys to the kingdom for businesses. You know everything. You know the truth. You know where all the bodies are buried. You know everything about what's going on in the business. And yet, it's so interesting, because unlike what you're sharing, most CPAs don't look at the business. They look at the taxes. They look at the compliance. They look at the modular elements of business, but not the business as a whole. And that's why the business consultants that whole business consultancy is growing. So even in the traditional firms, but what you're saying is that's your whole, as you say, democratizing, accounting. It's a whole new way of looking at this. Do you envision that there will be other Dark Horse CPA branches as you grow? Is that what's your dream for the company?
Yeah, I mean, we're not, a franchise model or anything along those lines. It's truly, an accounting corporation that has principals that have a stake of equity in that corporation. And so we're all employees of that. So really, we're just trying to grow this thing as big as we possibly can. We've got a ton of interest and demand on that, on our Accelerator program, as well as our principal program, which brings in folks that are existing sole practitioners that just have hit that artificial ceiling. So, we're going to be about 35 folks heading into this tax season, and there's no limit to, how much we want to grow. And the reason is that, if we truly want to change the industry, if we want to save public accounting, from some of the ills that, are leading to this talent shortage, we can't be thinking small. We have to be thinking much bigger than that, because we can't make life good for 35 people and say, we've accomplished our mission.
Exactly. That's really why I wanted to take this time and to actually share the story with people. It's sort of interesting because I've been searching for other radical CPAs and trailblazers. It's pretty hard to find you guys, and that's why I wanted to really share the message. And I wanted to also ask you, who are your influencers? Like, who has influenced you? Who have you looked up to? Who are your icons that have people that you would say represent? They motivate you. They inspire you. Who inspires you?
I'd say, probably the first person that comes to mind is Donald Miller, who runs a company called, StoryBrand is what it used to be called. It's now Business Made Simple. He's based out of Nashville. And he actually spoke at Point Loma Nazarene, which is where I went to college, which is where I first got introduced to him as an author, who then became an entrepreneur. And, what I've learned from him is, the clarity of, your messaging and how important that is. And it's not just, to get clients. For us, it's been huge in how we communicate to CPAs, because we've created a product or a category, market segment that doesn't exist, right? So we can't say, oh, we are, an RIA, or we are, a brokerage. I mean, it's a hybrid of a lot of different business models that we've rolled up into, our firm and our offering. So a lot of education, is, required there. So getting clear on the messaging and, how to, put that messaging through the framework of story has been huge in terms of getting people to understand, the why of, why we exist, and, really, resonate with our mission. So he's definitely been super influential. I mean, some of the big ones out there like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, I mean, there's a lot that can be learned from all of them. With Jeff Bezos, I think something that resonates for me is how they've turned different expense items on their P&L into separate businesses, and have created an ecosystem that fuels itself. And that's what we're endeavoring to do with Dark Horse, being more than just the accounting corporation, but having other supporting businesses that, have their own value proposition to, the external market, but feed the, global company, in meaningful ways.
Like your training.
Right. Yes.
Right. So one other thing that I wanted to ask you is, how do you envision inspiring, encouraging, attracting other forward thinkers, open-minded thinkers into your kind of model in accounting? How do you do that? Is that something that you're looking to do?
Yeah, I mean, I think what our history up to this point has really been more on the transformation side. So they didn't come to us necessarily with that, lead foot that, this is what I'm trying to do. It was kind of like, okay, what is this? Oh, this sounds really interesting. Can I do this? yes, you can, and we'll make sure that you're successful.
If you're talking to them about transformation, they would go, huh? Right?
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, for us, it's a little bit of a balancing act, because the people who are super entrepreneurial oftentimes are going to have their own firm, and are set in their own direction, and that's not really what we're doing. We're providing a platform for practitioners, under a shared brand, that is has a bit more control from the top in terms of, we're implementing things that are going to make everyone way more efficient. So there's a best practice, guidance through how that works. So there's a little bit of a balance in terms of the type of personality that might be just super far on that trailblazing spectrum versus someone who's kind of in our wheelhouse. But I would tell you that we end up turning just about everyone in our company into a trailblazer of their own. So yeah.
Right. It's really very fascinating. All right, a couple of more questions. First one is, what's your number one pearl of wisdom around being a trailblazer or going in a new pathway? What's your number one piece of advice?
Build the plane while it's flying. I know that that's scary, but if you're not willing to go head first with an idea, knowing that you're going to have to pivot, you're going to have to scrap certain things that you've come attached to, and maybe are embedded within your ego. It really is a matter of constantly, iterating on those ideas. And if you think that you can think of an idea and just go tunnel vision at it, you're going to be sorely mistaken. So if you want to be a trailblazer, you got to realize that trail is not linear. There's, many different, ways you can go, many turns you need to make, many pivots you need to make. And you just have to be open to possibilities and, constantly evaluating the success of, your ideas and, tweaking them and pivoting where you can, because ultimately it's just a series of turns, in that trail that, you're ultimately blazing.
Yeah, and it's really true. Most people are afraid to get even get on the plane, much less, like keep it going. And so I think it's really a great visual that you provided about the willingness to be that way. It is so contrary to the analysis by paralysis kind of thing, right? So usual approach for professionals, and it isn't just accountants, although accountants are pretty, it's pretty expected of them, but you've done a complete turnaround. And I think it's really fascinating and wonderful and so needed by the profession. And I'm so glad that you were able to speak with us. So how do people find you? What's the best way to communicate with you? Where can they reach you? Okay, self-promotion time.
Yeah, so we actually have a VP of Principal Development. His name's Justin Kern. So Justin at darkhorse.cpa. He's kind of the initial person you would talk to about either coming in as an accelerator, a junior principal, or principal, kind of depending on your situation. Darkhorse.cpa. We've got a careers part of our website that gives you a little bit more of the story behind, who we are and what we're doing and the why. And soon, probably in the next 2 months, we'll also have a separate domain called abetterway.cpa. Once again, abetterway.cpa, and that's going to have just a lot of content, that is really relevant across the board, whether you're doing things on your own, thinking about it, or, working at a higher level in a traditional firm. So a lot of really good content, that will help advance your career, as well as, expose you to our brand and how, you might be able to make that step.
Fantastic. I'll post it and I'll put links in underneath the video that I'm going to be posting. So everybody will get to know that. Chase, thanks so much for being with me. It's always such a great conversation. I love the fact that you're doing something so innovative and so setting a new pathway for some very, very smart, very educated, hardworking people who just maybe don't have the belief system or the, the idea to actually take it in a new direction. So kudos. Thanks for being with me.
Thank you, Nancy.
All right, everybody. See you next time. Bye-bye.